I want to take a couple of minutes just to walk you through some of the common tools that are used for the installation of a metal roof. That doesn't mean that you need everything here, but these are the tools that I use sort of on a day-to-day basis depending on the type of job that I'm doing. So in front of me we have the majority of our cutting tools. I have an electric nibbler here, which is great if you're doing long runs. If you're cutting a very long panel, you're taking off a rib or you're doing long cuts. This is a great piece to have. Here we have a pair of Malco shears. Also makes for a really clean edge. Also very good if you're doing relatively long runs, but it makes for a really clean cut. These three, you've got right snips, left snips, and straight snips. The right snips are the ones that I use 90% of the time. I usually have a pair of green in my tool belt. Straight, I don't use them very often. Everyone, if you talk to 10 different installers, everyone has their own way of doing it. Here we have a great tool by Malco. It's a shear that fits onto a cordless drill and makes for great cuts, long distances. And what's really nice about it is you can get really tight, clean cuts if you're doing the opening for a pipe or for any type of any other protrusion through the metal panel. But this is great. It's small, fits in the toolbox, and attaches to most cordless drills. For measuring tools, it's pretty straightforward. You have your tape measure. You're going to have a small square, which is great for doing small cuts and bends. You can actually use it as leverage when you're bending a piece of trim around a corner. A calculator. Obviously, we all have calculators on our phone. I find that having a calculator separate from my phone is much faster. When you're doing panel calculations, trying to figure out how many panels per section, I want to use a calculator. We have a square, which, as I've talked about before, I've pre-marked for my panels. So depending on the panel that I'm using, I'm going to make the most common measurements here on the square and use it. This is also going to be used for measuring for pipes, chimney flashings, valley panels, all that kind of thing. It's essential to the installation of a metal roof. And here we have a straight edge, which is also a ruler. We don't really use it as a ruler unless we're doing really long measurements in the valley, but we use it as a straight edge. Here we have three forming tools. All of them are made by Malco, and all of them are either sold or rented by All American Steel. So this here is the Malco ER3, which is a forming tool, which is a huge time saver that you can rent from All American Steel when you purchase your metal roofing materials from them. This allows you to change the depth of the bend up to 4 inches and makes for a really easy way of putting a 90-degree bend in a panel, especially on a long panel run where you're doing a rake and you want to do a box rake and you want to turn it up. Great piece of equipment right here. Again, you can rent it from All American Steel. This is a 6-inch pair of hand seamers made by Malco as well. Great for doing small bends or small progressive bends. And here we have the Malco Deft 1, which has 2 different depths to it, as you can see here. And this, again, you can use for finishing panel ends, doing bends up along a rake, or bends in a valley. All of them extremely useful, especially when you're doing standing seam roofing. Here we have a few tools that are pretty basic. We have a rubber mallet, which is great for finishing panel ends where you don't want to abrade and damage the paint on the panel. Standard hammer. Obviously, we all know what a hammer is. Staple nailer, if you're putting down underlayment, absolutely necessary, even if it's just to hold it in place for a few minutes so it doesn't slip down the roof. Very important. A rivet gun, this is when we're doing finishing detail where you don't want to have metal roofing fasteners exposed, especially if you've installed the Lexington panel or the Concord panel. Both of them are standing seam hidden fastener systems. You want to use a rivet gun on detail like the ridge cap. Here we have a flexible drill bit, which, as you saw when I did the piping flashing, is incredibly helpful at the back of the pipe where you can't get your drill in if the roof is particularly steep. So using this flexible drill bit allows the drill to be offset from the pipe and you can still get your stitch screws in. So very good piece of equipment. And obviously cordless drill. You want to try and use a drill that is not an impact drill. You want to have a drill that has different settings for torque. That way you're not over-tightening your fasteners. So last but not least, we have some items in front of us that aren't really tools, but they're extremely important. Namely, a pair of gloves. Metal roofing and trim is extremely sharp. Anyone who's worked with metal before knows that it cuts extremely fast. So wearing a pair of gloves makes the installation clean, easy, safe. You don't have to worry about your hands being cut up. Highly recommended. Those who don't wear gloves usually pay for it afterwards. A Sharpie. We shouldn't be writing on metal panel, pre-painted panel, with graphite pencils. The reason being that the graphite can corrode the metal paint. So, using a Sharpie, highly recommended. Here is the installation manual from All American Steel. Now, this isn't a tool, but a lot of time and effort has been put into making these installation manuals, and they're there for a reason. They're there to guide you through the various details that you're going to encounter on your project. So have a copy ready. If you don't have one, ask your All American Steel representative to get you one, and you'll find it extremely useful both on whatever project you're going to work on today as well as in the future. Here is a piece of wood. Obviously, it's pretty straightforward. We use this when we're tamping down panels in the valley. So we use this in combination with a rubber hammer, a rubber mallet, so that we don't damage the panel, as you've seen in the video where we did the installation for the valley. And here is just a piece of scrap with duct tape on it. Again, we use this between the offset cleat and the valley pan so that when we're sliding panels up, all the scratching that you see here takes place on this piece of metal rather than the valley. Thanks very much for watching, and if you have any questions, please reach out to your All American Steel rep or shoot us a note through social media.